Hey there, guys. Welcome back to AFC Game by Game. I'm here joined with Daniel, aka the son of Chelsea, regular on 100% Chelsea. Daniel, we're here to talk about the game on Sunday, Arsenal versus Chelsea. First of all, how have you been? How are you enjoying this rather cold afternoon evening now, as it is in London?
I'm doing okay. I never really like these games, the big games between the clubs. I think they're games you never really enjoy until they're over if you've won. So yeah, it's a little bit weird going into the game on Sunday because of our current form, but definitely feeling positive, about our things. So it's good to be here to talk to you, mate.
It's funny you should say that you're not feeling like overly confident. I know Chelsea have been pretty. I'm sure you won't take any offence to me saying pretty diabolical this season. But like over the past, what is it, 5, 6, 7, quite a good amount of years, you've had the best over us. So I'm not feeling confident at all, albeit that been pretty poor this season. I think you're the one that should actually be feeling quite upbeat and positive going into this game. And another reason why you should feel like that is because you've got nothing to lose in this game, essentially, because I don't know what your ambitions are in terms of getting the top four, because the way I see it, Chelsea realistically are too far from getting a top four spot this season. And you've literally just got to kind of rectify what's already gone wrong, which is going to be hard. But if you have a positive end to the season, go into the transfer market in summer, get some good signings under your belt, you're back there next season competing for the title. So it's going to be difficult in terms of recouping this season. But, I mean, what are your general expectations for Chelsea before we get into the game on Sunday? What are you expecting from Chelsea under Guus Hiddink in this second half of the season?
I think definitely a kind of a more calmer atmosphere. I think that's definitely one thing that Guus Hiddink does bring. He's a very calm individual. He's a very he seemed to have come in, and when you listen to him speak, he as I say, he's a calm speaker. He's an intelligent speaker. He's an experienced manager. He's been in this type of situation before. He understands how to deal with players. I thought one of his first press conferences when he came back, he was very honest, gave the players a lot of criticism. And I think for fans, I think they very open that. And in a lot of cases, we were very sad to see Hiddink go because we won an FA Cup with him in 2009. That was one of the best days I've been involved with Chelsea, definitely right up there. And seeing him go then, done such a fine job coming in after Scolari in '09. So he's come in, he's changed a few things round. There are still problems at Chelsea in terms of our defence, in terms of certain things. There have been improvements to sit here and the stats really, the matches that we've had, a lot of people in the past week have been saying, well, have Chelsea improved under Hiddink? Of course, if you look at the table, it's not like we're in the top half and we haven't won every game since Mourinho's gone. But I think there have been signs of improvement. I think just our defence really at the moment is letting us down. But in terms for the rest of the season, I want Chelsea to show a little bit more heart. I want Chelsea to rectify a lot of the errors that were made in the first part of the season. I want players like Costa to at least reach over 10 goals, maybe 15. Players like Hazard, maybe, who's coming back on Sunday, I believe, to try and make the best of the season. I just want players to show more fight, more capability, because I realistically think if we could put a run of 6 or 7 results together, I think we could win an FA Cup. I don't think that's an unrealistic or stupid thing to say. I think the FA Cup, because it's a cup competition, you're not playing every week. It's a lot depending on the draw, but I think Chelsea could realistically set as a target, and that would, I think, not appease a lot of the fans, because for Chelsea, the expectations, the money we spend, it's just an FA Cup in the season. I think even if it's a trophy, it's not what Chelsea should be aiming for. But to rectify in the circumstances, I think that's the best we can hope for this season. Also, I'd like Chelsea to try and bring through more young players in the situation if we're not going to get top 4. And Hiddink has said this, actually. He's come out and said when it becomes mathematically impossible for us to get top 4, he's going to start playing young players, which I think is a positive. So overall, hopefully just more positivity in the second half of the season.
Yeah, great response there. I think Hiddink, to be honest with you, I like him as a guy in terms of looking at him as an opposition fan, because I think he's generally refreshing to the league, especially after that game against Everton when he came out and openly said that the John Terry goal was offside. I mean, how many managers would do that in the Premier League? I mean, I'll defend Arsene Wenger till the day I die, but he's not someone that would come out and openly say if a goal has been ruled offside or not. So it's good to see that from Hiddink, but I'm still not sure whether he's earned the right to be in the position that he is with Chelsea. Yes, it is kind of a no-win, no-lose situation at this moment in time because Chelsea are in a very precarious situation. And you did mention getting an FA Cup for you this season. I think that would be superb for you, given the way things have gone. I mean, being an Arsenal fan, I know our familiarisation with the FA Cup, and it's a great tournament to win, especially when things aren't going well for you in a Premier League campaign. So you have still got things to play for this season, albeit your Premier League defence has been somewhat of a shambles, probably one of the worst defences of the title we've seen in some time. But let's also talk about the Jose Mourinho sacking, because the way that came about, what has been probably your greatest ever manager to last just over, about over a year at the club upon his return. I mean, I thought it was really weird that you got rid of him despite having such a poor season. But on the flip side, what is the owner going to do when Chelsea are playing so badly? If Mourinho had been in charge, what's to say that those results wouldn't have continued to within the club? So, I mean, now that you've had a bit of a time to reflect on it, I know Chelsea fans were absolutely distraught when Mourinho left the club. Now you've had time to reflect on it, do you think that possibly Abramovich and the board members have made the right decision when they sacked Jose Mourinho?
To say it's the right decision is always going to be a very difficult thing to admit, because it's Jose Mourinho. He's the best manager that Chelsea have ever had. I don't think I'll ever say it's the right decision to sack a manager like that. I know he has a lot of critics, but I think even most people can admit that just stats tell you that Mourinho's right up there in terms of the top managers recently in world football. He's right up there, and that's sacking one of the best managers in the world. You really, in terms of ability, I know this season he wasn't showing it, and we had a first the shambles that was the first half of the season. But at the same time, I think that looking back on it, maybe it just was a case where everything was going wrong. There really was nowhere for us to kind of go. But at the same time, I can never really admit it's a good decision. But maybe it was just a case where it was just the board looked at it and went, there's just nothing we can do here. The players aren't happy. The manager isn't happy. Every week it looks worse and worse for Chelsea. Maybe this is the only way. But at the same time, I think there's still a lot of Chelsea fans who feel very bitter towards Michael Emenalo, who's the technical director at Chelsea, has a lot to do with transfers. And he was the one who came out and made the quote about palpable discord, I think it was, he said. And I thought that interview was completely mistimed, just a bad decision, whoever was at Chelsea, to make that call to record that interview on that night, and him to come out, a man who he'd worked with for about 3 years quite closely, and not even mention him. He didn't even refer to Jose by his name. He called him the individual. And for a lot of Chelsea fans, it felt like a slap in the face. It felt like a disconnect between the board and the fans, and the players as well. So he's still a big problem for me at Chelsea. His signings just continuously just one wrong after another, and it's in some ways it's similar to Arsenal, just buying players that just aren't at a Chelsea standard. We saw Papi Diliboji left Chelsea yesterday after playing 1 minute of football. I know he's gone out on loan, but I don't expect him to come back to Chelsea. Signing players like Michael Hector in the summer, who's never going to play for Chelsea, isn't even in the first team squad. It's just signings like this. We've heard about Pato maybe coming in. It's just, for me, it's kind of, I've gone off topic a bit here, but for me, I can never truly say that it was the right decision sacking Jose Mourinho. There's a lot of emotion that goes into that, but maybe it just was a case where, looking at it reflectively, it was the only right decision. But to say there's just, that means all the problems that Chelsea have gone, I think that's a long way from the truth. I think there's still structurally problems with our club. I think in terms of our long-term kind of vision as a club, I don't think we have much of a long-term vision from what I'm looking at. I don't think we utilize our youth system properly. I don't think with our current signings, we've got a guy there in Michael Emenalo who truly understands what he's doing. And yeah, so reflecting on it, maybe it just was the case where it was the only option, but not a nice one in a sense. But you got to move on. You just got to move on. You got to support the players, and that's what the fans have done. They haven't. Since then, I haven't heard Jose Mourinho chants. Very rarely have I. So it's not like the fans have just revolted. They revolted for one game against Sunderland, and that's been it. We've got behind the team, which is the way it should be.
Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from there, and understandably, you sound really frustrated of how things are going with Chelsea at the moment. And I guess considering like being an Arsenal fan myself and having been alive the same amount of years as Arsene Wenger's been in charge of the club, I don't really know the current emotions that you're going through as a Chelsea fan, because whenever I've seen Chelsea, similarly to Real Madrid, they go through periods of short-term success with no long-term ambitious plan, because they go through managers like it's nobody's business. And does it not concern you that there's no real stability within Chelsea Football Club, and that's something that's becoming more and more and more evident as each season goes by? Because when Mourinho came back, I thought he was going to be the guy that could possibly manage you for the next decade. But you're back to square one now, because what candidates are there out there, apart from maybe John Terry in a couple of years' time, that can honestly take over Chelsea, be an experienced manager, and lead you on to a long-term plan?
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you. And that's one of the things, I mean, on my personal channel, I've made several videos talking about the youth system. I think that's one of the biggest problems with Chelsea. We've got one of the best youth systems in the country. When you look at some youth systems like Southampton, which are supposed to be some of the best, our youth team usually beats them quite convincingly. You've seen the success we've had our youth system with the trophies. And you see a player like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who comes in, all right, it was against Scunthorpe, but he scores and then he doesn't play for the next 2 games. And that's, for me, a real big frustration. We aren't utilising that system well enough for me, because I think if we could have a system there, and I think the youth system pretty much sums up Chelsea at the moment. There isn't a structure. Chelsea, when we send out, like, for instance, Arsenal, when they send out a player like Serge Gnabry, who I really rate as a player, you're sending him out to get him experience for Wenger to eventually bring him back into the first team. I know his loan move's kind of gone wrong this season, but when we loan out young players, it isn't to bring them back, it's for them to go, and then they eventually somehow they keep on getting loan moves till eventually Chelsea can make money out of them. That for me is wrong. No, not every young player is going to be able to make it into the first team. But the fact is, with this current crop of young players Chelsea have, I think your thing about structure there, I think that's a big part of it. Chelsea have to build a structure around the youth team that can produce players that can come up into the first team. It would make a bigger connection with the fans. If we had a player like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, an English player, central midfielder, comes into the team, does well, the groundswell of positive emotion when he scored against Scunthorpe in a game that's just a so-and-so FA Cup match, I think pretty much showed you the fans' response to him. And I really don't think there's much excuse from Chelsea at the moment. So I think that comes into a lot of it. And yeah, it does worry me. Who are the candidates? I think for me, Pep Guardiola, I think, has already gone to City. I think it's pretty much done. I think City have been planning him.
The thing with Guardiola is, similarly to managers that you've had in the past, if you look at his track record, he hasn't really stayed anywhere for more than 2 or 3 years. So is he just kind of going with the trend if you were to get someone like him in?
I think it's a bit unrealistic. I personally think that the way football's going, I think the most you're going to see a manager stay at a club is 4 years. I truly do. I think that's just the way football's going. The sad thing about it, that's I think Arsene Wenger is definitely the last of his kind, if you want to put it like that, in terms of a manager who's going to stay at a club for more than a decade, you know, and build his legacy. I don't see that happening anymore. But that doesn't mean you can't have a structure behind it, that when a manager does go away, your whole system falls apart. You're left in shambles, basically. There still is room for Chelsea, with the investment we have, with the things we've built over the past decade, to be able to set that up. And I think Simeone's probably, for me, I'd like to see Simeone come in. If there was someone to me, you'd say right now, pick a manager available in Europe. Because as I say, I think Pep Guardiola's off to City. I think City have been planning that for a few years now. I think I'd take Simeone because he's worked with players like Diego Costa. I think that would keep Costa around if he had any plans of going somewhere. But with the Atletico Madrid kind of ban, that won't happen, I don't think, now. But I do agree with you, mate. It's something that I passionately speak about all the time. It's one thing that very frustrates me. It's just little things as well, just like giving youth more of a chance, sending players out on loan just to sell them eventually, you know, and never playing in the first team. It's a big frustration, and it's something that you can level at Chelsea. One thing Arsenal do have over Chelsea is that structure, because when Arsene Wenger does eventually leave the club, whatever manager goes into that club, you've got a youth system that probably could improve, that probably could develop more players, but you still got some bright young players out there. A big stadium, great financially. We know that about the spreadsheets at Arsenal, one of the best financially run clubs in Europe, one of the richest clubs in Europe. So that's the long-term stability. And I want more that with Chelsea, but we're not the one making the decisions. It's Roman Abramovich who has the final say on a lot of these things. And I'm not ungrateful to what Roman's done. And I think it's a bit, you get people who go, well, how can you criticize Roman Abramovich? If Roman Abramovich wasn't at Chelsea, of course, you wouldn't have had all this success. Of course, I understand that. But I think there are some times when our club could have been run better in the past. And I think Chelsea fans just felt with Mourinho, this is a time where we're going to have a stability. We're going to have a manager who's going to build a legacy for the next 10 years. He's going to bring through young players. But as we know, it doesn't work out like that. And I don't think we're going to have a situation where a manager goes into a club, a top club, and stays for more than 3 or 4 years, in my opinion.
Some really interesting points made there. Really interesting outlook on how you think managerial careers will pan out. I mean, it is a bit concerning. I guess you could say that managers will only be around for about 3 to 4 years, which I can definitely agree with. There are no long-term candidates out there anymore to take charge of some of Europe's most elite clubs. I mean, it's going to be really great to see how Zinedine Zidane gets on at Real Madrid, whether he'll be a long-term candidate there. But just diverting away from that point, the next thing I wanted to discuss was some of your star players this season. I know that some of them arguably weren't playing for the manager and Jose Mourinho, but albeit they're on ridiculous amounts of money every single week, they should be playing for Chelsea Football Club nonetheless, irrespective of who's in charge of the club. Eden Hazard's been shocking this season. Cesc Fabregas has been nowhere near the player that he was last season. Diego Costa coming back into a bit of form, but still incredibly underwhelming. The only one that's really stood out is Willian. Apart from that, your squad has been nowhere near the same level it was last season when you won the league. What do you put that down to?
I think it's a number of things. I think we could go way back to the end of the season last year. It was well documented that the Chelsea side was overworked. Our players looked tired. Then for some reason, our club decided to have 2 post-season games after the season had ended in Sydney and Thailand, just for financial reasons. We go over there, players are overworked. Loads of the squad have to go and travel over there to have more matches. Then they've got to go on international duty. We come back late to pre-season, so we have basically no pre-season. So I think by the time we played Arsenal in the Community Shield, we played about 2 or 3 games against, it was just a really badly timed pre-season. It was just an awful pre-season. It didn't set us up for the league and the season itself at all well. It was just, and players still looked unfit for the first few seasons. And funny enough, I remember when Pedro came in at West Brom, when he had such a good game there, it looked like that's a player who had a pre-season. Now, most of our players, I think, have been struggling from that. It's not an excuse anymore in January. But I think there's a number of things. I have sort of good info that the squad wasn't on good terms, or it wasn't a good atmosphere in the dressing room even back in May. And that's why Petr Cech went to Arsenal, because he wasn't really liking life at Chelsea anymore. He wanted to go to Arsenal. He thought that was the best thing for his career. So I think that as well, maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. It's just it's a mystery, and there's some people have been saying, it'd be interesting to see if a book is ever released about this season, because for a club that absolutely dominated the Premier League last year, by the time we beat Palace, I think we were 13 points clear at the top of the league. I think eventually we were 8 points. To do that in this Premier League, I think is so impressive from that team of what they were able to do. I think people always kind of say about last season, I know it's going off track again, but about that we had won it before Christmas. I think that's such that's stats just tell you that's rubbish. We were 11 points with City on New Year's Day after we lost to Tottenham. That team then had to go win more matches, and we won the title. So maybe it's a case of us. I also think, and you're probably as an Arsenal fan, and I'm sure people watching this will go, will laugh at this, because you think as a Chelsea fan, how can I be saying this? But I think our squad, we lack a lot of squad depth. I think as Chelsea, if you look at what we did last season, we played with fundamentally about 14 players that would rotate, but mainly it was the sort of same team. When you see Eden Hazard playing nearly every game in the season, John Terry playing every Premier League game in the season, Ivanovic, Matic, Fabregas, who looked overworked by the end of last season. I think there was a load of factors in that, and as you say, the Ivo Carneiro situation, which I think is made more of than I think people make like it's the only factor within why Chelsea have gone wrong this season. I think people just make out that either kind of everything happened and then everything went wrong. I think if you've been watching Chelsea, you could see signs of things going wrong in pre-season. Things weren't improving. And yeah, I think, as I say, mate, I don't really have... I can only look at the stats, as I say. Poorly planned pre-season. Bad transfers. That's one thing I didn't talk about. Bad transfers. Didn't get the right transfers in. Didn't strengthen when we needed to. Players looking at overwork. Players not trying for the manager. Players out of form. A load of things. Crisis around the club. That's probably the way I can put it. Can I pin it down to one thing? I really can't. And maybe one day we'll find out more. But that's a difficult question to pinpoint, because I think so many things have gone wrong at Chelsea. I think there's just more than either Carnero, which everyone seems to think is the only reason why Chelsea have gone wrong this season.
It's funny that you mentioned transfers, because in the past you've just been throwing money at the wall, just been buying absolutely every player under the sun pretty much that could do a job at Chelsea. And I thought it was really weird that you had a relatively quiet summer by your standards, and the best signing you seem to have brought in was Pedro. And he's a player that I want to hone in on in a way, because I think given the hype around him when he joined Chelsea, given that he was being compared to Alexis Sanchez and other prestigious players, I think he's been unbelievably disappointing for you, especially given the price tag that's on his head as well. I think he's escaped criticism. And the thing that annoys me about this is it's probably a little petty thing that I'm picking up on personally, but the way that, you know, he's escaped criticism. But if he was at Arsenal, I can't help but feel he'd be getting absolutely slaughtered in the press. Like given how much you paid for him as well. I just think he's just not been at all convincing, especially as he's a player that was established in that Barcelona side until Neymar came in and is still established in the Spain national squad. So what do you make of Pedro this season, and do you think that he's honestly lived up to the expectation that Chelsea fans were expecting of him when he arrived at the club?
I mean, just the first point you made about not much being made of it in the press. Funny enough, this week I've seen so many articles about how now he's being shipped off. He doesn't want to be at Chelsea anymore. That was earlier in the week, and now apparently that's come out and said, no, that's rubbish. That isn't happening. Sky Sports, funny enough, came out and said Pedro, he's happy and content with the club. I think the thing is with Pedro is I think he's a quality player. I think he will be a quality player for Chelsea. I can understand where you're coming from, and definitely I can understand when you look at a price tag of a player. I think I'm a little bit more sympathetic towards Pedro simply because he came into a side that was, you've got to look at the circumstances he came into. He came in late. He came into a side that has so many problems. I think one thing I've never doubted with Pedro is his work rate. And that's one of the things that I think as a Chelsea fan, with looking at the squad this season, in many players, I think we've lacked like players working hard. I definitely think Pedro is going to turn out to be a great signing. I just think it's been a case with him, especially he's had injuries as well. I think people forget that in the earlier part of the season, he did have a sort of an extended kind of break of an injury. I think it was late October, I think it was. And then he didn't come back till about early November, I remember rightly. So he did have a little bit, he's had injury problems. He hasn't always started. Now since Hazard has had his injury problems, he's played more. And actually I thought against Everton on Saturday, I thought he's started to come into the game a lot more. As I say, I think he will turn into a class player. I think as well, maybe sometimes, maybe he could maybe go into a more central role. I'm not entirely sure. Of course, he's not led up to the price tag, or lived up, sorry, to the price tag that we expect of him. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of other factors that come into it. Chelsea have been appalling this season. He came into a squad that had a load of problems internally within the club. He had injury problems. I think that overall, I'm a little bit more sympathetic to Pedro because I think that overall he does put in a shift. I think he is a quality player. He has shown signs of that this season. There's no doubt to me that I think in the long term, I think he will be still a good signing for Chelsea. I think he will prove to be that. Currently, right now, I'd rather have him in the team than Eden Hazard, and like that's the fact of it. And if you were to tell me that a year ago, that probably sounds ludicrous, even though we know Pedro past seasons has been a brilliant player. But I don't know. I think with Pedro, it's a case where I think he came into an unfortunate situation, a club that did have a load of problems. And I think he will start to find the best of his form. I think he is starting to get a lot of criticism from the media. I think but it's good to hear that the talks of him maybe being sold, I think, have been rubbished by reliable sources. So that's the positive thing for me.
Yeah, you mentioned Eden Hazard as well, and we will get on to the game that's coming up on Sunday very briefly. But I mean, just very briefly, what do you think's gone wrong with Hazard this season? Because last campaign he was absolutely unreal, and he has been pretty much throughout his whole Chelsea career. He's been a world class player. But this season, I think he generally looks unfit as a player. I think he's put on a bit of weight. I don't think he's looking anywhere near the player he has done in recent seasons, and he just doesn't look motivated. How can you not be motivated when you're playing for the Premier League champions and you're earning about what, $250,000 a week he must be on? So, what has gone wrong with Eden Hazard this season?
I think he's one of the players that I did, when Mourinho left and there was a lot of booing of players. And I remember being in the stadium, I didn't boo any of the players because I personally I don't like booing my own players, because I don't know what it solves, but people did. He was one of the players that was singled out. And I think if you compare it to players like Fabregas and Costa, especially like Fabregas, I think if you compare those two players, I think Fabregas has just been shocking form. I don't think he mentality-wise has had a problem. I just think he's maybe knackered or he's just out of form. I think the thing is with Hazard, you can question his mentality. I think the relationship his relationship with Mourinho seemed to be brilliant, seemed to go south. As well, sometimes he has been singled out by Mourinho in the past by not tracking back, not working hard. I do think he's one of these players that if he's not up for it, he won't. I think like a player like Alexis Sanchez, if he's 50%, he's playing. A player like Diego Costa, if 50%, he's going to try and play. I think the problem is with Hazard, I think if he's not 100% or close to that, I think maybe this season, especially, I think sometimes I've looked at stuff and I thought he's just kind of given up there. I thought some of his attitude on the pitch hasn't been good enough for a player of his talent. I think there has been consistent questions that he wants to leave. I think the Real Madrid ban is very interesting, because if that does stay intact and Real Madrid don't get out of that, I'd be very interested to see what happens in the summer. Because personally, I think if Real Madrid and Zidane himself wants Hazard, is a big admirer of him, and I don't really see why Hazard would go anywhere else other than Madrid or Barca, in my opinion. I think that's where, if Hazard wants to, in his words, step up, that's where you go. I don't see people saying PSG. I really don't know why I'd go PSG. For me, that's a bit of a sort of sidestep in a way, if you think about it. You're
going from a backward step, I'd say.
Yeah, sideward, backwards. It's not, for me, I think Hazard would probably, if in his mind he wants to go to, with these European players, everyone wants to go to Real Madrid and Barcelona. I think it's Arsenal suffered with that in the past. I think most clubs have. Gareth Bale in recent years. I think it's just one of those things. But I don't know. I think his mentality can be questioned, and I don't know what's happened to him. I thought he's been one of the most enjoyable players to watch. When he's on form and you watch him live, he is spellbinding to watch. The way he makes football look so easy, and he could easily turn up Sunday and wipe the floor of Arsenal, because he's got that potential. But a lot of the time this season, he just hasn't shown it, and that's the big problem. And I question his mentality. I question, is he there at the moment? Does he truly want to be at Chelsea? I know he's been in the stands recently because of his injury, but I just question someone's mentality. I mean, he was there watching the game against Everton, and at the end, the celebrations when John Terry scored and all the players went over to celebrate, which is something we've rarely seen this season. He can't be. I was watched. I think they put him on camera, and I remember thinking, if he's watching that and isn't thinking, I want to be in with those players, I would love to be on the pitch currently and be in this moment, then I really start to question a player's mentality. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I don't know how the Madrid ban has affected that, but I think a lot of talk has been that he wanted to move, and so Eden Hazard, it's another weird one. It's I think it's down to his mentality, and I think it has changed for some reason.
The thing is, though, if he wants to move away from the club, we're not going to make this the whole Eden Hazard show, but if he does want to move away from the club, then surely by playing crap football, he's not really selling himself to any of the top clubs in the world. We won't stick on that topic. I just think it's just weird if he's going to purposely play badly and not represent Chelsea as a club. If he wants to move away, a step up, as you call it, if that's what he's truly looking for, if rumours are to be believed, then why would any club want to buy into a player with that kind of garbage mentality? It doesn't really make sense. And being an Arsenal fan, having Fabregas and Nasri in the past. You know, I can totally see where you're coming from in terms of that. But it would surprise me because Hazard seems to have such a connection to Chelsea. But maybe I've misinterpreted him in that sense. It's so hard to really judge a footballer nowadays in terms of their admiration for a club. But we'll get away from that. Just before we do talk about the game, one thing you've got, which is rather discussion worthy, I guess you could say, Alexandre Pato coming into the club. You seem to have a whole array of strikers now. Loic Remy, I don't know if he's remaining at the club. Diego Costa, I don't know if Radamel Falcao is even alive still. Pato to add into that bunch of players, do you think he's going to be worthy to you, or is he going to spend most of his time like on the injury table?
That's my kind of suspicion about it. For me, it's another weird signing, especially when you look at a player like Charlie Austin, who goes to Southampton. He's a Premier League proven striker for $4 million. It's a bargain. Currently, it looks like we're going to spend about $7 million on him for a 3-year deal, which surprises me. And for a player who's injury prone, sure is still relatively young, 26, so could be in the prime of his career. But it's just another trend. He's probably, for me, more likely. He could come in and do a very good job. But is he going to go on that list of players at Chelsea who have come in, have passed their prime, and as a striker, don't find the back of the net and spend more time off the pitch than on it? I'm very surprised. I think it's another case where our board has failed in terms of the recruitment thing. And we've brought back Patrick Bamford. Why not give Patrick Bamford a chance? People give me abuse and say, how can you say Patrick Bamford? He barely played at Palace. Like, with these young players, you never know how good they're going to be unless you give them a chance. And
yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
One thing I will say is with like Bamford, he didn't get a chance at Palace. But to be fair, Francis Coquelin wasn't really playing all that regularly for Charlton when we got him back. And if you look at the player he's evolved in, I mean, players play differently in different situations. The motivation a player can get when they're playing for a top level club is totally different to when they're playing in like a lower league team. But yeah, anyway, as you were.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit of a weird signing. It's one kind of left field, but does it? I think there's a load of questions to be asked about Chelsea, because I think that you have to ask, are Chelsea struggling to make big signings in terms of, because Guus Hiddink isn't the long-term manager? Are they worrying because of the fact there's going to be no top 4 football, no Champions League next year? Is there very unlikely we're going to get top 4? Are they worried about, like, are they struggling to attract players, which does kind of surprise me. I think the thing is with Chelsea, I think you talk about the money aspect of it as well, but I still think Chelsea can bring players in the summer. I think people would look at it and go, Chelsea, like, it's a bit like United in a way, because if we can finish about 8th or 9th, similar to where United finished under that season of David Moyes, I think people would look at a good squad, depending on what happens in the summer. And players, I think, would still be attracted to come to Chelsea, central London, you know, and think that next season, if they get it right with a manager, especially who the manager is, I think it could make a big difference. But maybe it's the fact that as well, they don't know who the permanent manager is going to be, so they're worried about buying players that will not fit into his system when he comes in. Because when he comes in, they may have bought a player that's just not going to fit into his system. So I think there's a lot of factors with Chelsea. Once again, it's just a very weird signing. But as I say, it could work out for the best, but we never know. But the stats, I think, tell you that he's not the player he was a few years ago, and down to injuries. And we've already got 3 injury-prone strikers. Costa, great, he's playing on Sunday, but the fact is he every now and then can get an injury. Loic Remy, I feel very unfortunate for him, because we always call for him to be given a chance. And when, like, Costa's injured, he seems to be injured at the same time. And in Falcao, just a mystery where he is at the moment. So it's a whole thing where, are we just bringing another striker who's going to basically do the same job? And I think Chelsea are trying. I think the thing is with Chelsea, they're trying to offload Falcao back to Monaco, end the loan deal, and then make Pato the replacement for that. But the fact is, what happens to Bamford? Does Bamford go on loan? We haven't heard anything about that. Are Chelsea waiting for a deal to happen? Personally, I don't think Chelsea should let go of Remy, because I think that'd be a mistake in itself. He's someone who deserves more chances. But it's it's just, I mean, as we were talking earlier, mate, it's the current transfer business Chelsea are doing. And if you go onto any sort of, you've got my Twitter feed, if you've got most Chelsea fans Twitter feeds, if you just speak to Chelsea fans at the moment, that's one of the most worrying things is Michael Emenalo. He seems to be the guy currently at the moment who seems to be at the head of this kind of recruitment phase at Chelsea, and it just doesn't seem to be working well.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that one. You've had some weird transfers in the past couple of months, really. I'm not going to deny it that Papa Diliboji, I think I've said his name right there, that was the weirdest one out of the lot. I think that was a really odd signing. But in terms of transfers, it has seemed to have got a bit off the boil. But getting away from all of that admin stuff, I guess you could say, let's move on to the game on Sunday, Arsenal versus Chelsea. We haven't really discussed that yet in length. You did say at the start of the video you weren't feeling overly confident. And I pretty much argued why you should have a right to kind of feel confident going into this game, being that you seem to have one up on us over the past couple of years. I mean, I'm not overly confident going into the game, but after 2 disappointing results on the road, I say disappointing results, you look at them, Stoke away, Liverpool away. I mean, we've had half our squad out, half our key players out of injury. They're not 2 bad points, in fairness, but there'll only be 2 good points if we get a win in this game against Chelsea. And if we're not able to beat you in what is your worst season in Premier League football, possibly in the past decade, then I mean, I really struggle to see if we'll go on to lift the title this season, because we've got City hot on our tails. We're level on points with Leicester. Got to take Leicester seriously at this point. Sorry to say that. I honestly think Leicester are going to have like a fantastic season. I honestly think they can get top 4, but it's in our own hands, really, and we've got to be winning games like this, because I think you've got a lot of potential areas that can be exposed. I think we can definitely nullify the threat that you've got in the players that are so talented for you. The only one that seems to be consistently motivated for you is Willian. If we're able to keep him quiet, then I think we've definitely got a good chance of winning this game. But it really does depend on, I think it depends on a lot of factors, whether Arsenal go into this game with the right mentality. If we go into it thinking, Chelsea have been poor this season, we can just go out there, play our game and get the 3 points. Because it's not going to be as simple as that. It's a London derby at the end of the day as well. Chelsea should be as motivated for it as we are. And I think it's going to be really weird in terms of it panning out, because, as I said previously, you've got nothing to lose whatsoever. You've got not much to play for in the league, and personally, you've got to play for pride. And I do expect an expansive style of football from Chelsea. There could be potentially a lot of goals in this game, because Mourinho's not in charge. You're not going to be happy with it. I mean, as a Chelsea, would you be happy with a point in this game?
Probably still, yeah. I mean, because Arsenal are top of the league. I don't. For our I think we do need to win this game, of course. I mean, you look at where we are on the table. If we want to realistically still get top half of the table, we've got to start winning. I think with Arsenal, the current form they're in, the fact that you are motivated, I think psychologically, I think this Sunday is massive for Arsenal. For some reason, whenever the 2 clubs have come and faced each other recently, for some reason, Arsenal just don't seem to step up when they play Chelsea. I know the game in September in the league was kind of a weird one because of the Mike Dean situation. But at the same time, it seems a lot of the time recently, your big players don't seem to step up in these games.
The thing is, I would argue that, though, straight away already. We've played both Manchester clubs this season, especially.
No, I'm talking about Chelsea. I'm not talking about
specifically about Chelsea when we play them.
Yeah. Just no. Of course, when you've played this season, when you've played the big teams, I probably should have said that better. When you played the big teams, your big players have stepped up, and that's probably one of the. If I was an Arsenal fan going into Sunday, that's one of the positive things. Is you do look at things, and we're not like you think that Arsenal are not like freezing when they come up against big teams this season, beating Manchester City, wiping the floor of Manchester United, a team that you struggled against in the past. So players like Ozil, players like Sanchez, players like Giroud scoring in big games. But for some reason against Chelsea, that just hasn't seemed to correlate. For some reason, some of your players haven't stepped up. But I expect a different type of game on Sunday. I do expect players like Ozil, who I thought you really missed on Sunday against Stoke. You just seem to have no. You could clearly see that Ozil was missing on Sunday for Arsenal. You looked at it, no fluidity in the middle of the park. Ozil, who's so key to your attack, so key to making attacks, so key to controlling in the game, and threading those balls through to Giroud and whoever's up front to Walcott. You know, it's I think you desperately missed him on Sunday, so I think that's going to be a big key. Sanchez with his aggressive nature, with being a world-class talent, I think it's a big thing for Arsenal. As I say, psychologically, I think it's massive for Arsenal. I think if they can come out of this game with 3 points, I think it will give the fan base a real lift, beating Chelsea, and as well going into that title race. Because, as you said, even though where we are on the table, we're still Chelsea, and I think a lot of the time, I think people forget how big of a part the mental side of the game is in terms of players. Because I sometimes think that maybe in the past, when Arsenal come up against Chelsea, especially like Mourinho, Wenger, I think sometimes maybe Arsenal players, it could have got to them. I think the pressure from Arsenal fans of wanting to win this game, maybe especially at the Emirates in previous seasons, may have got to Arsenal players. In my opinion, some of those games where you watch it, and sure, we have been very defensive, but I sometimes have looked at Arsenal players and thought they're not exactly taking all the risks there. There's a little bit of fear in their game, and probably as an like Arsenal play best when they haven't got that fear, when they're playing freely, when they've got the ball, they're passing it around. You have shown a little bit more grit in your team this season in terms of being able to win games when you aren't playing at your best, which is the sign of champions. So I think there is a lot more positives for Arsenal going into this game because of the fact your big players have stepped up in big games this season. Ozil has consistently played well this season, so he's going to be a big factor for you. But as I say, as an Arsenal fan, I guess as well, looking at Chelsea and thinking of the recent history, I could still see a sort of bit of doubt that creeps into the mind of probably at the back of most Arsenal fans' heads, because you look at it and you think, especially with this Premier League season, you don't know what's going to happen. And with the quality, because there's still going to be Diego Costa on the pitch, there's still going to be Cesc Fabregas on the pitch, there's still going to be Eden Hazard if he plays, Willian. These are still on their day top class players. So it's not like we're going out there with a bunch of unknown players, with players that don't have any quality. That's the thing. But I don't know. I still think Arsenal are massive favourites for Sunday, and I think really I don't think I think if Arsenal don't win on Sunday, I think that's a big step back for Arsenal in my opinion. I think if you can't win against this Chelsea side, I think it will give such a negative impact to the Arsenal fan base. Even a 0-0 draw, I think, will give a negative impact to the Arsenal fan base, because I think they'll look at it and think, once again, this Chelsea side somehow has claimed points over us. We still can't beat them. Man City are playing on a Saturday, so probably the expectation is you could be behind them by Sunday. So it's a massive game for Arsenal. As you say, maybe there is a little bit of pressure left off of Chelsea, and I do understand that. But I still think it's a pressure game for Chelsea. We can't afford to lose, because going into Arsenal, you never want to lose those games. But I definitely do think for Arsenal especially, they kind of have to win on Sunday, because I think it would also, I think for people who are doubtful of Arsenal winning the league, I think that will sort of change beating Chelsea, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of exactly the same when we went to Stoke away as well. But for this game, we're kind of given the boost of Alexis Sanchez and Mesut Ozil returning to the squad. And one thing I've noticed with Arsenal in the past when we're playing Chelsea is that we really do struggle to score against you, and that's because you've got such a disciplined, well-regimented defence. But this season, especially in recent weeks, I thought maybe your defensive discipline was coming back when you beat Palace 3-0, but then it seemed to kind of go out the window when you conceded 3 to Everton, and you conceded 2 to West Brom as well, I believe. So I definitely think there's room for exposure in your defence, and that's something that I certainly feel if we don't score against you in this game, then that's going to be really disappointing, especially with the likes of Olivier Giroud, Mesut Ozil. Joel Campbell has been fantastic for us this season. Actually, whilst we're on the topic of that, Joel Campbell kind of come out of nowhere. What do you make of him as an opposition fan?
It's quite surprising, actually, because I think the time he was given, I remember Arsenal fans kind of complaining that maybe he wasn't given a chance. I remember there being some kind of outcry because when you signed Danny Welbeck, that there was some outcry from Arsenal fans that why didn't you just give that? Why'd you go out and spend money on Danny Welbeck when you could have given Joel Campbell a chance? He seemed to have gone off the radar a bit. I remember he played so well against Olympiacos when he was out on loan, when they beat United, and he scored that amazing goal against them, and that seemed to lift a lot of Arsenal fans. He's kind of under the radar a bit, because I remember earlier in the season I'd seen him play and he hadn't really impressed me that much. I remember a game against West Brom. I remember he had a chance, literally, it was almost like an open goal, or the ball came into him, and I think he messed up, and I think you guys went on to lose that game. So maybe there's a little bit of doubt, but that does come from how young he is as well. So I think he's coming to the side. It's another proof that Wenger does definitely give chance to fringe players, and does especially to players who are young. He definitely will change things. So I think that, yeah, he's impressed me, and I think he is one player that especially can be a sort of, what's the best word to put it, like an unexpected threat, because I think most of the time you expect maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain, Aaron Ramsey on that right wing, or a player like him to come on, maybe could be something that Chelsea don't expect. So he, especially with the pace he has, with the quality he has, could cause us problems.
I mean, the thing I love about Joel Campbell is that he seems to have everything about him in his locker that, like you say, has gone under the radar in the past. Because when I saw him play against Tottenham in the Cup and I saw him play in the League Cup before, I just thought, this guy isn't at an Arsenal level. Let's get rid of him in January because he's not going to cut the grade at Arsenal Football Club. But since coming back, the vision he's got, I reckon he could actually play in a centre attacking midfield role for us if he was deputising for someone like Ozil, because the vision and the range of passing he's got is absolutely class. That pass he made against Olympiacos for Giroud's second goal was absolutely unreal. That was a superb pass. But as well as that, he's got loads of pace. His work rate is exceptional, and he's incredibly skillful. So he's the ideal candidate to have on the wing. And the thing I love about him most is not just the vision, but the way he can cut in from that right-hand side, and he's got a lovely left foot on him as well. So he's a great player to have in the Arsenal team. I genuinely hope he's able to keep this kind of consistency, because it'll be really interesting to see how he performs when we come up against Barcelona. But won't ramble on too long because it has been about 45 minutes now. So, Daniel, on a final note, what are your score predictions for this game?
I think down to our defence and, the fact that I think Arsenal probably will score in this game, I probably, from a Chelsea perspective, I think realistically I could see us maybe drawing 1-1 or drawing 2-2. I think if our players step up, we definitely can score goals. I think you'll want to score goals. I think Arsenal would definitely want to be motivated for this game after the last two games, which have in some ways been disappointing. Of course, they weren't defeats, but at the same time, maybe a little bit disappointing because you did expect you were winning against Liverpool for so long and conceded late there. I think the Stoke game was a little bit of seen both times. But I remember watching that game, both sides seemed to lack quality that day. No one could keep the ball for more than a minute. So I think Arsenal, especially with the players back that we discussed, I think will be key, and I think the fans will be right up for it. So yeah, I think it'll be a very difficult game. I think personally for me, 1-1 is, I think, realistic for me for Chelsea. I think it'd be a bit ludicrous for me to come on here and say Chelsea are going to go on and win 3-0. Sure, we do have the quality within us to do that. And who's to say that we turn up on Sunday and we put in a real good tactical display, our big players step up, and maybe we could win something like 1-0 or 2-1 or whatever. But personally, I think it's a really tough place to go to, the Emirates, and I think the best we can hope for is maybe a 1-1.
I mean, to be fair, to give you some confidence, it would be just absolutely typical if you did turn up and have probably your best performance of the season against us, which is, as an Arsenal fan, I can assure you that's something that is quite highly probable. But my personal score prediction, it's a game Arsenal have got to win. Got to inject some confidence into this game, and if we turn up, if we play our A game, then I think we could potentially win this about 3-0. But I really do struggle to see us doing that against the Chelsea side. If we are going to win it, I think it'll be no more than 2-0. But my honest score prediction will be 2-1 to the Arsenal. Chelsea have got enough quality in them to get a goal against us, but I think given that they've had a poor defence, given that they've been pretty shambolic this season, if we don't win this, then we'll be making a very poor statement, and it will bring into question once again our title aspirations. But I'll leave it there on that note. Hopefully Arsenal will go out there on Sunday and get the win. My thanks to Daniel, who has joined me tonight for what has been almost an hour. Please do follow Daniel on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and also follow at 100% Chelsea, who Daniel is associated with. Two great channels. They're producing fantastic content on a regular basis, so do make sure to check those out. Do subscribe to AFC Game by Game if you are new to the channel, trying to get loads of content pumped out on a regular basis. And do like this video if you have enjoyed it. My thanks once again to Daniel. And as always, I will speak to you very soon. And yeah, speak to you soon. See you later.